Lyndon Johnson, the market in the United States was destroyed. The National Review was perhaps less worried about the power exercised in the market by General Motors than by the Department of Agriculture and the Civil Aeronautics Authority and the Federal Communications Commission and the infinity of other regulatory agencies. Well, the day of Roosevelt, Truman, Kennedy, Johnson is in the past. All of those people, all of those men, damaging in their motivation as regards the market, are gone. And we have Mr. Nixon. Mr. Nixon, whom Mr. Buckley ardently supported, with whom he is spiritually close. And when Mr. Nixon gets up, when Mr. Buckley gets up to speak, I'm sorry for that mistake, I hope you will have in your mind as to whether he will tell you whether the market has been redeemed, has been rehabilitated, has been restored by Mr. Nixon. Whether the Department of Agriculture, for example, has abandoned the support prices, the price fixing, which Mr. Buckley has condemned as destructive of the market, and rightly so. Whether it has broken up the large agglomerations of power, which even the most elementary defenders of the market have said to be necessary if one is to have the orthodox neoclassical manifestation of market forces. Whether there has been a disestablishment of the Federal Communications Commission, the putting of Federal Communications licenses up for auction, as the National Review has frequently advocated. Whether indeed Mr. Buckley can mention any particular in which there has been any rehabilitation of this institution which he himself concedes to have been destroyed. Or whether indeed the administration of which he has been a supporter hasn't done two things. Hasn't in its welfare programs taken a quantum step further to ensure people a minimum income. My own judgment, a very wise and progressive step, but one which would be hard to reconcile with the free market, with any kind of market, as it manifests itself in the purchase of human services, of people's services. And whether, for example, in something like the railroads, once on these islands referred to as the commanding heights of socialism, the Nixon administration hasn't, within the last few days, taken a major step to nationalize rail passenger transport, and whether this represents the rehabilitation of the market which the National Review and which Mr. Buckley have said would be necessary for that institution to have any meaning. The other thing that the administration has done, as part from continuing rather than reversing the thrust toward planning, which I've adverted, has, I think, also been interesting. That has been carefully to assign Mr. Buckley, one of its loyalist and most energetic and most articulate, and certainly its most amusing supporter, to tasks within that administration which consciously are removed from anything having to do with economics. When Mr. Buckley gets up to speak, his mind has already turned to this. His mind turns readily to obvious points. He will point out that President Kennedy took the precaution of sending me to India so I would not be closely associated with economics. Perhaps he is right. This was certainly a lesson well learned by Mr. Nixon, who carefully associated Mr. Buckley with broadcasting. And broadcasting not to the American people, but to the people of the United Kingdom and to the lesser breeds without the law. I have parenthetically, a tendency to optimism. I wonder if perhaps we may find in the end that Mr. Buckley will join Mr. Davidson and join Mr. Evans in their, if I may say so, discreet support of this motion. I would hope that would be so. We all remember that Saul was redeemed, Mr. President, on the way to Damascus. How wonderful it would be if Mr. Buckley were redeemed this evening on the way to the Ritz.
Well, before he returns to the Ritz, we're very delighted to welcome back Mr. William F. Buckley, Jr. to oppose the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President, Ms. Hewlett, Mr. Riddell, Mr. Galbraith, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here again. I have to confess that my being here is not necessarily a tribute to my intelligence. The last time I was here, before I opened my mouth, the gentleman who was opposing the resolution received a standing ovation. That was before he opened his mouth. It seemed to me then that the Cambridge Union was trying to tell me something. So here I am back to defend the unfashionable notion that there is some virtue left in the free marketplace. And to do so, moreover, under circumstances which have, if I may say so, underwritten this incapacity of mine. Mr. Galbraith makes reference to my having been appointed, which it is true I was, to a small commission on United States information, of the United States Information Advisory Commission. And it is true that when Mr. Nixon appointed me to that post, by the way, the law requires that not more than 3 members be of the same party, so he had also to appoint 2 Democrats. I thought to accept primarily because it seemed to me obvious that I would be blocked by Senator Fulbright, a distinction for which I confess I yearned. I was greatly disappointed and in due course confirmed and received, as one does, Mr. Galbraith would tell you, having received several of them in the course of his long and memorable career, what they call a commission. A commission is a piece of paper in which appears the script and 4 blank spaces, 1 for your name, 1 for the position to which you have been appointed, a 3rd for the duration of your appointment, and a 4th begins with the printed words "in recognition of : after in my blank space was written his integrity and ability. I thought it very nice that Mr. Nixon knew about my integrity and ability, Mr. President. But in due course, I started to wonder what was the inventory of adjectives from which those 2 had been plucked. The lawyers say numero unius exclusio alterius. And in due course, I became restive about this, and then a few months later, in Saigon, talking with Mr. Bunker, he was called out, and I saw his commission hanging on the wall, and I rushed over to see what was written in his blank space. In recognition of his ability, integrity, and prudence. Imprudence, I suppose, helps when one moves against the zeitgeist